I sat perfectly still, listening to the harsh rip of a plastic garbage bag. My daughter-in-law was packing away my entire life, smiling at the thought of dumping me in a state-run nursing home before lunchtime. She thought she had finally outsmarted a fragile, penniless widow. She had absolutely no idea my wealth manager was already on his way. I watched her from my favorite velvet armchair, intentionally letting my hands tremble just enough to make the act look believable. Chloe grabbed careless handfuls of my favorite blouses, the ones I had worn for years, and shoved them violently into cheap black trash bags. What did not fit in the bags was forcefully crammed into a battered suitcase I had not used in decades. Every rough, dismissive movement she made felt like a physical blow to my chest. It was a betrayal so profound it made my heart physically ache. Yet beneath that crushing heartbreak, a cold and terrifying fury was quietly taking root. Chloe tossed my favorite wool cardigan onto the pile and sighed dramatically, wiping a fake bead of sweat from her forehead. "You are going to love it there, Yvonne," she said, her voice dripping with that sickening, sugary sweetness she always used when she felt she was winning. "They have bingo and people your own age to talk to. You need proper round-the-clock care now, and Marcus and I just cannot provide that for you here. It really is for your own good." I kept my eyes down and nodded slowly, feigning defeat, while stealing a glance at the tall grandfather clock in the hallway. The medical transport van from the county facility was scheduled to arrive in exactly 1 hour and 45 minutes. They honestly thought I was broken. They assumed that because I was 68 years old and needed a little extra time walking up the stairs, my brain had somehow deteriorated right along with my joints. My name is Yvonne. For 35 years, I was the principal of one of the largest high schools in Atlanta. I spent my entire career reading people managing severe crises and seeing right through the lies of both children and adults. But absolutely nothing could have ever prepared me for the cruel deception brewing under my very own roof. This beautiful 4-bedroom house in the suburbs was completely paid off. It was my hard-earned sanctuary. 6 months ago, I had a standard hip replacement surgery. My son Marcus and his wife Chloe insisted on moving in temporarily under the guise of helping me recover. At the time, my heart swelled. I thought it was an act of genuine familial love. I had raised Marcus as a single mother, working myself to the bone, and I truly believed I had raised a man of honor and integrity. I was so terribly wrong. My body might move a little slower these days, but my mind remains as sharp as the day I retired. I saw exactly what they were doing to me, and I was entirely prepared to let them dig their own graves. 20 years ago, my entire world shattered into pieces when my husband suddenly passed away. Marcus was just a young boy back then, and overnight I had to figure out how to be both a mother and a father to him. I stood at my husband's grave and made a solemn promise that our son would never want for anything, and that he would achieve all of his biggest dreams. I worked relentlessly every single day to keep that promise alive. During my early years working in the school district, I took on every single extra assignment I could possibly find. I worked exhausting double shifts, supervising late-night after-school programs, and I spent all of my summers running local educational camps instead of taking a much-needed vacation. I proudly wore the exact same winter coat for 8 long years, and I pinched every single penny I ever earned. When Marcus was finally accepted into a prestigious law school, I did not hesitate for even a second. I cashed out a significant portion of my early retirement options just so he could graduate completely debt-free. I desperately wanted him to start his adult life and his career without the crushing weight of student loans holding him back from success. I poured my entire heart and soul into raising that boy. I held an unwavering faith in our family unit, and I possessed a deep, unconditional love for my only son. I spent decades believing with all of my heart that I had raised a compassionate man of absolute integrity. I truly thought all of my sacrifices had molded him into someone who would always protect me in my old age, the exact same way I had fiercely protected him. But the moment Marcus and his wife Chloe moved their heavy boxes into my house 6 months ago, that beautiful, comforting illusion began to fracture. The peaceful and quiet atmosphere of my home shifted into something toxic almost overnight. Chloe brought a suffocating and arrogant sense of entitlement into my safe space. Within the very first week, she had completely taken over my kitchen, throwing away my expensive organic spices and tossing my favorite cookware to make room for her trendy, useless gadgets. She soon started hosting loud, obnoxious dinner parties on the weekends, filling my elegant living room with her boisterous friends while I was upstairs trying to rest my healing hip. She treated me like a bothersome nuisance in the very house I had worked so hard to pay off. If I gently asked her to turn down the blaring music, she would roll her eyes and sigh loudly, making sure I knew my existence was a burden she was forced to endure. And my son Marcus did absolutely nothing to stop her cruelty. My strong, educated son turned into a passive and silent coward in his own childhood home. He started avoiding my gaze completely whenever Chloe spoke down to me. He would just stare at his expensive leather shoes and make pathetic, weak excuses for her deeply disrespectful behavior, telling me that Chloe was just stressed from the difficult move. Instead of defending his mother, he spent all of his free time pacing the floors and constantly complaining about their own personal financial struggles. He endlessly whined about how expensive their modern lifestyle had become, and how incredibly hard it was to keep up appearances with his law firm colleagues. He was carefully laying the groundwork for the ultimate betrayal, and I was initially foolish enough to think he was just going through a temporary rough patch in his marriage. The first unsettling sign arrived in the form of missing mail. For decades, I had meticulously tracked every piece of correspondence that entered my home. I kept a modest, everyday checking account at the local community bank with a steady balance of $40,000 just to cover sudden emergencies or household repairs. But suddenly, the thick, familiar paper statements stopped appearing in my mailbox altogether. At first, I blamed the postal service, thinking it was just a simple delay. Then the small, undeniable discrepancies began to multiply. One Tuesday afternoon, I walked quietly down the hallway toward my home office to water my ferns. The door was slightly ajar, and I heard the distinct rustling of paper. I pushed the door open to find my son Marcus hastily shoving folders back into my heavy oak filing cabinet. He jumped violently when he saw me standing there, his eyes wide with a guilty, panicked expression I had not seen on his face since he was a teenager caught sneaking out past his curfew. He quickly wiped his sweaty palms on his expensive dress pants and stammered out a flimsy excuse, claiming he was desperately searching for a stapler to organize some legal files he brought home from work. I did not raise my voice or accuse him. I just smiled warmly and told him the stapler was in the kitchen drawer. He practically sprinted out of the room, eager to escape my steady gaze. After he hurried down the stairs, I stepped up to my antique desk. I immediately noticed that the small brass key to my fireproof lockbox had been shifted from its usual hiding place inside my ceramic pen cup. It was a tiny, careless mistake, but it told me everything I needed to know. The suffocating tension inside my house continued to escalate until it reached a breaking point late one Thursday night. I woke up with a dry throat and decided to go downstairs to the kitchen for a glass of ice water. As I slowly navigated the dark wooden stairs, my bare feet made no sound. I stopped dead in my tracks when I heard low, urgent voices drifting from the living room. It was Chloe and her older brother Terence. Terence was pacing the floor and pressuring Chloe relentlessly for a massive loan to rescue his completely failing logistics business from total bankruptcy. I stood frozen in the dark hallway, holding my breath, as I listened to the venomous words slipping from my daughter-in-law. Chloe aggressively hushed her brother and told him to stop panicking. She confidently promised him that his money problems were about to be solved completely. Once we put the old bat in the county state facility on Friday, she whispered sharply, Marcus is using his financial power of attorney to immediately list and sell this huge house, so you will finally get your cut of the cash. A violent wave of physical nausea crashed over my entire body, forcing me to grip the wooden banister just to stay upright. The heavy room spun violently around me. My own flesh and blood, my brilliant son, was actively conspiring with his greedy wife to legally steal my beloved home and dump me into a notoriously substandard, underfunded Medicaid facility. They were going to throw me away like actual garbage just to fund their reckless financial mistakes. The deep, agonizing pain of their ultimate betrayal cut right through my soul, leaving me gasping for air in the shadowy silence of my own hallway. The very next morning, Marcus and Chloe left the house early to attend a lavish brunch downtown, leaving me completely alone with my devastating discovery. I marched straight into their messy bedroom and went directly for the expensive leather briefcase Marcus always kept locked near his dresser. Using a simple metal paperclip, I effortlessly popped the cheap brass lock, open, a trick I learned from confiscating contraband from unruly high school students. My hands did not tremble at all as I pulled out a thick stack of pristine legal documents. Right on top was a completely fraudulent power of attorney form bearing a clumsy, amateurish forgery of my signature. Sitting directly beneath that horrific document was a fully drafted real estate listing for my property, already pricing my beautiful home for a quick cash sale. As I stared at those damning papers, a profound realization washed over me. Marcus and Chloe firmly believed my entire net worth consisted of my monthly teacher's pension and the $40,000 sitting in my checking account. They were completely and utterly unaware of the $3.2 million private trust fund my late husband had carefully set up for me before he passed. For 20 years, I had quietly grown and masterfully managed those investments, keeping the massive wealth a total secret to ensure Marcus learned the vital value of hard work. The agonizing emotional pain that had paralyzed me the night before suddenly evaporated completely. In its place, a cold, calculated, and absolute resolve took permanent root in my chest. They thought they were manipulating a naive, helpless old woman who had completely outlived her usefulness. They were about to learn a very hard lesson about underestimating a mother who has absolutely nothing left to lose. I made a deliberate choice not to scream or shed a single tear. Confronting them right then would have only given them the opportunity to destroy the evidence and gaslight me. Instead, I decided to play directly into their cruel narrative. I started acting increasingly confused and docile to completely lower their guard. I would ask Marcus the exact same question 3 times in a row, or pretend I had completely forgotten how to turn on the television in the living room. Chloe ate it up instantly, flashing that smug, condescending smile whenever I appeared frail and helpless. But the emotional toll of this daily performance was heavier than anything I had ever carried in my entire life. Every single evening I had to sit across the dinner table and look my only son directly in the eye, knowing exactly what he was actively planning to do to me. I watched him casually eat the hot food I paid for, while he secretly plotted my total financial and personal ruin. It took every ounce of strength I had cultivated over my 68 years to maintain my ironclad composure. I swallowed my deep maternal heartbreak and replaced it with pure survival instinct. I smiled politely at their fake concern and retreated to my room early each night, using the privacy of my bedroom to carefully plan my next move. I was no longer a loving mother indulging her precious child. I was a fierce woman defending her life and her home from two greedy intruders. I knew that if I let my emotions take control, I would lose everything I had worked so hard to build. I forced myself to be patient and wait for the perfect moment to strike back. The following Monday morning, while Marcus and Chloe were busy at their corporate jobs, I made two incredibly important phone calls. I reached out to my sister-in-law, Valerie. Valerie is my late husband's younger sister, and she happens to be one of the most ruthless and brilliant real estate attorneys in the entire state of Georgia. Next, I contacted Desmond, my deeply trusted wealth manager, who had spent the last 2 decades helping me quietly multiply my hidden assets. I requested a covert emergency meeting at Valerie's sleek downtown Atlanta law firm. Walking into her expansive glass office felt exactly like stepping into a secure war room. I laid out high-quality photographs of the forged documents I had discovered inside my son's briefcase. Valerie scrutinized the papers, her sharp, dark eyes narrowing with every single page she turned. Desmond sat quietly beside me, reviewing the financial implications with a very grim expression on his face. After a long, tense silence, Valerie finally looked up and leaned across her massive mahogany desk. She bluntly confirmed that Marcus had already committed several severe felonies, including aggressive document forgery and premeditated elder fraud. Hearing those harsh legal terms applied to my own flesh and blood sent a sharp, cold chill down my spine. But Valerie did not offer me any empty pity or useless sympathy. She offered me a solid battle plan. She explained that the fraudulent power of attorney form he created was dangerously close to being executed, which meant we had a very narrow window of time to strike back. Desmond assured me that my $3.2 million trust fund was completely untouchable, but my local checking account and the actual deed to my house were highly vulnerable to their scheme. We sat together in that quiet, high-rise office for hours, drinking black coffee and mapping out a flawless strategy to completely dismantle their malicious plot. I realized then how truly blessed I was to have such incredibly competent and fiercely loyal family and friends in my corner, fighting for my protection. With Valerie handling the complicated legal maneuvers and Desmond protecting my substantial wealth, I finally felt fully equipped to destroy the trap my son had so carefully set for me. I left her office that afternoon feeling a renewed sense of power and absolute clarity about what needed to be done next. Our first crucial step was setting the perfect trap for Marcus. Desmond strongly advised against immediately freezing my everyday checking account. Instead, we decided to use that modest $40,000 as an irresistible piece of bait. We knew Marcus was incredibly greedy, and we correctly guessed he would soon try to drain those funds to quickly pay off Chloe's brother Terence. We intentionally left the account wide open and simply waited for him to make a foolish mistake. 2 days later, Desmond called to inform me that Marcus had electronically transferred the entire $40,000 balance directly into his own private bank account. My son had just handed us an undeniable, legally binding paper trail of his outright theft. He had officially crossed the line from planning a terrible crime to actually committing one. While Marcus was busy quietly celebrating his stolen cash, Valerie was working her brilliant legal magic behind the scenes. She quickly and quietly transferred the official deed of my beautiful suburban home directly into my impenetrable $3.2 million trust fund. By legally changing the ownership structure of the property, she completely neutralized the fake power of attorney Marcus had forged so carefully. His fraudulent documents were now totally worthless pieces of paper that could never be enforced. With the trap perfectly set, Valerie and her dedicated team of paralegals began preparing official immediate eviction papers for both Marcus and Chloe. They also compiled a massive comprehensive legal dossier detailing every single aspect of their multiple crimes, including the forged signatures, the unauthorized bank transfers, and the dark conspiracy to commit elder fraud. Everything was meticulously documented and ready to be filed directly with the district attorney. As the weeks slowly dragged on, I continued to play my part perfectly inside the house. I packed a few small bags, just like Chloe instructed, acting like a defeated old woman who had finally accepted her tragic fate. I watched the clock tick down to Friday morning, feeling a strange sense of absolute calm settling over my entire spirit. I was fully prepared for the exact moment the county nursing home van was scheduled to arrive at my front door. I was more than ready to show my arrogant daughter-in-law just how dangerous a supposedly helpless old woman could truly be. The sharp chime of the front doorbell suddenly shattered the heavy silence in the living room. Chloe whipped her head toward the entryway, and a cruel, triumphant smirk slowly spread across her face. She smoothed down her expensive silk blouse and practically skipped to the front door, genuinely believing the county medical transport van had finally arrived to haul me away. I watched her hand grasp the brass knob with greedy anticipation. She pulled the heavy wooden door wide open, ready to greet the orderlies with her fake sympathetic daughter-in-law routine. But the smug smile instantly vanished from her face, completely replaced by a look of sheer, terrifying confusion. Standing on my front porch were not medical orderlies in cheap uniforms, my sister-in-law. Valerie stood front and center wearing a sharp designer suit and a lethal expression. Right beside her was my wealth manager, Desmond, holding a thick leather briefcase. And flanking them on either side were two massive, fully uniformed local county sheriff deputies with their hands resting casually on their duty belts. Marcus stumbled out of the kitchen holding a half-eaten apple, his jaw dropping as he took in the shocking scene on our front porch. This was the exact moment I had been waiting for all week. I placed both of my hands firmly on the armrests of my velvet chair and pushed myself up. I did not tremble. I did not hesitate. The pathetic, frail old woman they thought they had broken completely vanished into thin air. I stood tall, pulling my shoulders back, and walked with strong, steady steps right into the dead center of my living room. I looked my son directly in his wide, terrified eyes. I told him in a voice as cold and hard as steel that I knew absolutely everything about his disgusting little scheme. I told him I knew about his late-night conversations with Terence, his clumsy forgeries, and his desperate plan to sell my home from under me. And then I delivered the final devastating blow. I looked directly at Chloe, whose face had drained of all color, and informed them both that they had completely ruined their entire lives over a mere $40,000, completely unaware that I had been quietly managing a $3.2 million private trust fund for the last 20 years. Valerie stepped confidently over the threshold and slapped a thick stack of legal documents directly onto Chloe's chest, forcing her to grab them before they hit the floor. Valerie informed them in a razor-sharp tone that those were official immediate eviction notices. She gave them exactly 30 minutes to pack their personal belongings and permanently vacate the property under strict police supervision. Marcus tried to stammer out a pathetic legal defense, but Desmond quickly cut him off, dropping the ultimate financial hammer. Desmond calmly explained that the fraudulent power of attorney documents Marcus had forged were completely useless, because the official deed to the house had already been legally transferred into my untouchable trust fund. Furthermore, Desmond revealed that the $40,000 they had stolen from my checking account had been perfectly tracked directly into Marcus's personal bank account, creating an undeniable felony paper trail. Valerie then stepped forward and handed my son a very simple but brutal choice. She told Marcus he could either grab his bags and walk out the front door right now with absolutely nothing, or she would immediately hand the entire legal dossier over to the district attorney, ensuring he faced serious felony elder fraud charges and permanent disbarment from his prestigious legal profession. The sheer reality of their utter defeat finally crashed down on them. Chloe completely lost her mind, launching into a hysterical, screaming breakdown and viciously blaming Marcus for their spectacular failure. Marcus completely ignored his screaming wife and fell directly to his knees on my hardwood floor. Tears streamed down his face as he desperately grabbed at my pant leg. Pathetic and begging for forgiveness, sobbing that he was incredibly sorry and just wanted a second chance. I looked down at the man I had sacrificed everything to raise and felt absolutely nothing but a cold, hollow pity. I firmly stepped back out of his grasp and calmly instructed the armed deputies to escort the trespassers out of my home. 30 minutes later, they were dragged out the front door with only the clothes on their backs. I closed the heavy wooden door behind them and locked it tight. I walked slowly through my quiet, empty living room, taking a deep breath of the fresh, silent air, entirely consumed by the profound peace of my hard-won freedom and total security. The absolute hardest lesson a devoted mother can ever learn is that unconditional love does not ever mean unconditional compliance. We pour our entire souls into raising our children, making every possible personal sacrifice to ensure their future success and happiness. We give them our youth, our energy, and our finances. But sometimes, despite our absolute best efforts, the harsh world changes them into strangers. It is a deeply painful reality to accept, but you must always protect yourself, even from the very people you fed, nurtured, and raised under your own roof. Do not ever let your deep maternal love blind you to blatant disrespect or cruel financial manipulation. You earned your quiet peace, your financial security, and your beautiful home through long decades of exhausting hard work. Guard those blessings fiercely. Your ultimate loyalty must always be to your own well-being and survival in your golden years. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Let me know in the comments down below, where are you watching from today? And how many minutes of this video did you watch? Your support means the world to me. Stay strong, ladies.